in health and nutrition, and Dr. Boitumele Semete Makakotlela, the Executive Manager, Next General Health, CSIR, will be here to lead that particular discussion. It is my honor and pleasure to call upon Mr. Rob McLean to lead us in a discussion on marketing for biobusinesses in the 21st century. Please give him a hand.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch. Do you think we're ready to go, or are we waiting for more people to come back? Should we just proceed? I've only got 10 minutes, so we don't have long. Okay, so my name is Rob McLean. I am the managing director of a company called E-Commerce Experts. And what I'm here to talk about today is marketing your biobusiness in the 21st century. And I want to give you a real-life example of how it can sometimes work. When the organizers of this conference decided to find an expert on e-commerce marketing, they probably went to Google and typed in experts for e-marketing South Africa, and we came up first. So hopefully that proves that Google is very important, firstly, and secondly, that we're quite good at it because we came up first. Okay, so I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to jump forward a little bit. I will be available afterwards, I believe, in one of the rooms to, if any questions that people may have, and my contact details are at the end of the presentation. So firstly, I wanted to put up a few statistics that I pulled up, again, on Google yesterday, about how important this is. So I won't read them out, but you can see. Medical, welfare, healthcare products are the second most purchased product category in the US. Amazon sales in the category were 1.9, almost $2 billion last year, and it's rising by a quarter every year. That's massive growth in quite a mature market. So if you think that Southern Africa is maybe 8 years behind the US in terms of e-commerce, online penetration, buying stuff online, if it's 8 years ahead or maybe just 5 years, then this is where we're going to be. So it is inevitable. This is something that's very important, and we have to start making the plans now. Okay, so I want to be honest about what I know and what I don't know. I don't know your industry. I don't know health. I don't know bio. I don't know nutrition. But what I do know, and what we in my company know all about, is e-commerce, selling stuff online, digital marketing, how to get people to find you online, mobile, increasingly now in South Africa at least, more than half of internet sessions are from a mobile phone rather than a desktop. And social, that's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, how to use these networks to promote your business. Okay, so people here who have something to sell, either now or in the future, you have ticked the first box. You have a product, you have a price, you hopefully have supply chains, you know your industry, you know your target market. And although only one of these boxes is ticked, the first one, that is 80% of the work. Having a product to sell is the most difficult thing to do. All the rest is actually surprisingly easy. A few years ago, if you wanted to build a website and set up e-commerce and accept cards and integrate couriers and do all this stuff, it would cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of rands. But in the last few years, because of the development internationally of e-commerce, there are platforms to help you to do this. There's quite a few platforms. The biggest and the one that we mainly use is one called Shopify. You can go read about it. There's almost 1 million businesses around the world that use Shopify. But the point is, it makes it very easy to set up a world-class site, to do a design that looks great, setting up the menus for your navigation on your website. And your website will work on a cell phone as well as a desktop and a tablet and across all the browsers. To have checkouts, so adding a shopping cart. And you see the bullet below about secure payment. People used to be very nervous to buy online. Shop owners were very reluctant and nervous about buying online or accepting cards online, because if they were hacked, then suddenly they were giving people's credit cards away. Now all of that's taken care of. So you as a shop owner never need to handle payments. We just integrate with one of the big platforms that are out there. There's lots of free and paid apps for things like live chat, in the corner of a website where someone says, can I help? And You type it in. So you as a shop owner, product seller, on your cell phone can have those questions coming to you. So even as you're doing other stuff, you can answer questions and convert some sales. Things for vouchers, for blogs, anything that you see on a website, you can pretty much get without having to build and pay a lot for now. Secure payment I've mentioned. It used to be a headache, but now it's relatively simple. In South Africa, at least, integrating couriers for things like next day delivery, with a fixed price, with tracking so the user can see where their package is. Again, this stuff is easy now. It's been around for long enough that people have built the integrations and platforms, and we do this every day. And analytics and reporting, so you can see who's coming to your site, how many people, do they like your site, which products do they like, how many are converting. This stuff is no longer rocket science. And when I say it's easy to do, I don't mean necessarily that it's easy for us to do. It's actually quite easy for you to do. You go to the Shopify platform, it's designed for non-technical people to use. There's no coding involved. You just have to kind of get used to it and learn and look around a bit. Okay, so some people, and we have a lot of clients who are very reluctant to launch their site because they think as soon as they do, they can have thousands of customers and people wanting to buy from them, and how do they have enough inventory, and how are they going to get it to their customers? That would be nice, actually, if it's true. It's a lot more difficult than that. To actually be found is a challenge in selling by a business and selling all products in the 21st century. So there's different ways to be found. Search engine optimization, it's often called SEO, is the easiest, the best, and the cheapest. And this is about getting yourself found on Google. So when people search for your product or terms similar to your product, that you come first, or at least high up. There's many factors in search engine optimization. There's whole science and books written about it. And it's constantly changing because Google don't publish how their rules work or how they're changing. But some important things to think about is your website address. As I said, we were found when the organizers wanted to find an expert in e-commerce. We called our business e-commerce experts for a reason. So people find us when they're searching for that sort of thing. So you have to think about the name of your business and the name of your website address. The performance, Google look at pages that load very slowly, that don't work on cell phones, which is very important to Google now. That's called responsive or mobile friendly. How quickly it loads, does it work across all browsers? Things like that are very important because if Google don't think your site is good, then they don't push traffic to you. Things like keywords, tags, and descriptions. So when Google catalog every site, and they do it every day pretty much, they go through your site, the code of your site, and they say, okay, what are these people selling? What keywords have they got? What products have they got? What sort of stuff are they talking about? And that's how they determine where you come up. How relevant is it to the searcher when people type in Google? Google Shopping is a thing that's growing quite quickly. When you search for Google, maybe you're searching for Bluetooth headphones. You'll see at the top of the screen there's actually pictures, maybe from Takealot, maybe from Bid or Buy, Macro, all the products. So actual products are being sold and positioned at the top with the prices. So Google are almost doing a price comparison shortcut. So if you've got a product, you want to be on Google Shopping so you appear at the top of the screen when people search for you. And user behavior, how people behave on your site. Do they land and disappear immediately? That's called bouncing. If they do, Google think your site's not interesting, so they're not going to push you. Do they dig a little bit deeper into your site? Do they click through to other pages? Do they complete some actions? That's called conversions. So maybe the conversion on your site is to buy. Is it to contact you? Is it to start an instant chat with you? So things like that, the actual metrics of how people are behaving on your site are super important. You can't fake it. If you can, ultimately, it's real users and how long they spend on your site, how they engage with your site. So if metrics aren't good, you're not going to show in Google. So you have to think, is this site interesting? Is it relevant? Word of mouth, if you've got an existing business, if you've got an existing network, then telling everyone about it when you launch your e-commerce site. Marketing to existing people. You may have a newsletter, physical newsletter database. You may have an email database. You may have cell phone numbers. you should push all those people to your site, because again, Google will see that there's a spike in traffic to your site, that people are interested in it, and therefore you rise once again in Google. And there are lots of other tools, some free, some you can pay for, but things like public relations. If you've got a great new product, bringing a new product to a new market, being innovative, being interesting, then you should need to try and get some press coverages. And that can be physical press, newspapers, or it could be blogs, it could be opinion makers, it could be to get people to talk about it on Facebook. So they're the three things. In terms of paid marketing that you can do in the online world, Google AdWords, they're the sometimes quite annoying adverts that you see, the top 3 or 5 items when you search for Google, where it says it's an advert, or it could be on the side of Google search, but also you'll have noticed a lot of websites show these Google ads within those sites as well. So you can set up Google AdWords campaigns to be in those places. It's quite complicated, because it's not like you just pay to be somewhere and you're always there. It's a bidding system. So you say how much you're willing to pay, who you're looking for in terms of demographics, what keywords you want to do, and there's a very complicated bidding system where Google will work out where you appear and how much it costs depending on all those metrics. Facebook and Instagram, other big channels, we use a lot of Facebook ads. It's quite a complicated platform to understand, but especially if you've got a niche product or a product that appeals especially to one group of people, the sort of people that are interested in one sort of thing, then Facebook works very well, because it's more about who people are, what gets them going, Facebook work it out from their interests, what posts they like, and they paint a picture of all of us and say, this is this sort of person. So you can do a lot more kind of emotive targeting using Facebook ads than you can with Google AdWords. And in South Africa, I've listed some of the local marketplaces where you either have to set up an account with them, or you can fairly easily, again with Shopify, you can plug into some of these networks. So whenever you have a product on your website, it automatically shows on bid or buy and price check. And when you change prices, it changes in those sites automatically. If someone places an order, the courier, the fulfillment, the payment, etc. is all integrated. So you don't have to manage 8 different stores, you're just managing one store. And there are options to buy marketing lists, to buy email address and cell phone numbers, which there's a lot of people out there trying to pump these things. With the Poppy Act in South Africa, there's quite tight rules around it. The return on those sort of lists is fairly low and declining, but maybe you have a very relevant marketing list that could be bought specifically for your target audience. Am I making sense? Are we doing okay? Yeah. Got the graveyard shift here after lunch. You see, I also put stuff in checkbox lists. I know if I'm running out of time, I need lists to tick off, so that's why I did it like this. So this is the last slide, it's key tips. Firstly, try and get the free stuff right first of all. Search engine optimization is super important. There's a lot of information online about it. I've touched the surface of it. But think about your website domain, what it will take for Google to make you come first when people search. And there's no point sending people to something that's rubbish. You know, you can pay a lot on advertising and marketing and send people to an ugly site that doesn't work, and it's all wasted because you're not going to make any sales. So do the free stuff before you start chucking dollars at paying people to come to your site. It's important to know whether you're making money out of your marketing spend. So there's some things that you can do, mainly around Google Analytics, where you say what a conversion is. You kind of set it up so that Google knows and you know that people are buying, people are interacting with your site, they're actually making a transaction. So if you set up your conversions right, then you can see that maybe there's 1,000 people came to your site, but it's only this 50 sort of people who are buying. So rather than pay for adverts for the 1,000, just pay for the adverts to the people who look like those 50 people. But without knowing what conversions look like, you don't know how to target. Test and learn, start small. This is very important. We have clients that come to us who have very big budgets and they want us to spend them very quickly, and we're very happy to do that. But we do advise them, You got to test and learn. Sometimes traffic doesn't result in sales. Sometimes one advert works 10 times better than the other one. But actually there's another one which is a version of the second one which would work 10 times better than that. And until you put them all in head-to-head tests and see what works, and then do a test with one that's similar to the one that worked before, you don't know. So you can be spending a lot of dollars on adverts that aren't yet optimized. So do your testing, find what works, find the platform, the advert, the target market, and only when you've got that right, and if you set up your conversions correctly, you will actually know that if I spend another 10 rand on adverts, I'm going to get 15 rands of sale. When you hit that point, and you should be able to if you set up your conversion tracking correctly, then just start spending. But only start spending when you know you've got that right. Yeah, and there's a big, kind of fear and fashion, and it's dying now, which is a good thing, about buying likes, having a Facebook page and getting 20,000 followers and likes on Facebook. And people think that's an achievement, but it's not. So I've said it's about the dollars, stupid. It's not about having lots of people liking your Facebook page, because especially since Facebook changed the algorithms, if you have 20,000 followers as a business on Facebook and you write a post, many people think that that post goes to 20,000 people. It doesn't. Nowadays it just goes to a few, and Facebook see, did people like that? And if people liked it, then they'll show it to more. But having likes and followers isn't actually that relevant. What's important is selling stuff. So don't get caught up on likes and followers on Facebook and Instagram. And similarly with Google Ads, it's not about how many people see your ad, it's how many people buy your product and how profitable that product was. Don't get carried away. This is, again, as I said before, until you have a good sense of what's optimized, what's the best thing that you can do, then don't spend the big bucks, because a lot of it is going to be wasted. Understand the rules. The different platforms have complicated rules. Facebook about the percentage of text on an ad versus the image. What sort of products that you can sell. Who you can target with your product. All the platforms have slightly different rules, and it's important to understand those rules, and they've got different terminology for click-through rates and how the advertising happens. It's quite complicated, I've got to say, especially the Google AdWords and Facebook, it's quite complicated. And rather learn your way around it, do some research online, ask us to help you, rather than getting carried away and spending too much. Once you've found the right solution, keep testing and then stick with it. It's the only way to do it is by finding the killer formula and going with it. And then finally, it's a bit of a joke, but you've got to be lucky. Sometimes with a Facebook ad, the way Facebook ads is quite interesting. You create an ad, Facebook show it to a few people. This is a paid Facebook campaign. They show it to a few people, and if some people like it, it keeps getting shown to more people, and the amount that you pay starts falling. So the amount you pay for a Facebook ad depends on how many people like your ad. So if people don't like it, the price to you goes up, and Facebook show it to less people. So it does sometimes come down to the first few interactions. Do people like it? Do they comment on it? Do they share it? And if they do, then you get some momentum and you start getting your advert shown, and you start paying less for each time it's shown. So sometimes the same advert can work on one platform at one time that it doesn't in exactly the same circumstances a few minutes later. I don't think we have time for questions or anything like that, so I will be available in one of the meeting rooms just now. Is that right? I don't know where that is, but someone will tell you, and hopefully me. This is our website, and that's my email address if anyone's got any questions, wants to follow up afterwards. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. McLean, for that presentation focusing on marketing for bio-businesses in the 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going into a discussion on scaling a business, challenges and pitfalls to look out for in health and nutrition. And to lead that discussion is Dr. Samete. I would like her to be ready. Well, she's already here, and kindly get ready for those that come into the stage very shortly. Boitumelo is the executive manager of the Next Generation Health Cluster at CSIR. Her experience spans from research in CSIR's polymers and composites divisions for 5 years, where her team focused on developing nanotechnology drug delivery systems for TB, HIV, and malaria. She has managed a biotechnology incubator at the Innovation Hub Management Company and was with McKinsey & Company for 2 years as a McKinsey Leadership Fellow. Her postdoctoral research was at the University of Nottingham and EPFL Publications and EPFL Switzerland. She has published as first author and co-author in scientific publications, review articles, and book chapters. She sits on a number of committees, including the BioPAC Steering Committee, that's 2015 to 2017, the AIBST Scientific Advisory Board, and the Board of Directors for Africa Bio. She is also involved in a number of thought leadership projects, such as the AU Strategy for Health Research, the ECA Bioeconomy Strategy, and Implementation Plans Development Team for DST Bioeconomy Strategy. She has a PhD in biochemistry and also holds a master's in management, finance, and investments from Wits Business School. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Boitumelo Semete.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to introduce my panel members, and I'll call them each to the stage. Mr. Graham Osler. Sorry, the light is very bright, so I can't see from here. Mr. Owen Nyoni. Mr. Peter de Beer. And Dr. Beto Ntangeni. What we've agreed on as this panel is that I've asked my colleagues to introduce themselves, because as they tell their story, I think they'll also share a bit in terms of what they've done in scaling their respective businesses and scaling respective technologies. What we also know as scientists is that a number of times we develop technologies that we're all very excited about, and we implement them at some scale, pilot scale, etc., or you serve a small market. But the game completely changes the minute you have to scale up that business. But also we know the impact that scaled business can have in terms of creating jobs, in terms of addressing issues of inequality, but also stimulating industries and catalyzing already existing industries. So today what we're going to do is to share with you some of the pitfalls of scaling up, what works when one is scaling up, but also what opportunities are there. My colleagues will also talk about, particularly from the IDC, they'll talk about what are the types of things they're looking at when investing into a company that is to scale. But also, for me, the other question is, should every company scale? Is there really a need for that? So with those opening remarks, I'm going to start the session with the panel members. We will ensure that we create time for you to ask questions, because really this session is for you, and it is about an engagement. Thank you. So let me start with Mr. Graham Osler. Will you introduce yourself and maybe just share your company and share your story also?
Sure, thank you very much for having us. Denmark Estates is a commercial company in the manufacturing, sales and distribution space. We're fortunate enough to have been in business for almost 40 years now. It's a family business that's been passed on. I think our involvement with SANBio came where we actually approached the University of Pretoria to help us develop a new product. And it was a really exciting project where we took it from concept through to development in terms of the recipe, through to early commercialization, and then eventually through to the market. And it's been very exciting. So we basically work on a regional basis. We're not national. We operate in the central South African region, and we've got structures in place, fortunately, for, like I said, manufacturing, distribution, sales, and merchandising.
Thank you, thank you. I've got some questions for you, but I'll ask my other colleagues to introduce themselves. Mr. Owen, will you do the honor of introducing yourself?
Thank you very much, Doc. My name is Owen. I come from an organization called Capital Foods in Zimbabwe. I am a nutritionist by profession, animal nutritionist, that is. But for the past 11 years, I've been working in sales and marketing of animal feeds. Back to Capital Foods, our core business is to manufacture animal feeds for domestic animals as well as all farm animals, except cats. We also manufacture feed for fish, tilapia to be in particular, and we also manufacture game feeds. Besides just manufacturing, we distribute all our products, and we also take on board third-party products that complement our basket. And I am here in partnership with Chinua University, because as Capital Foods, we have taken a product that Chinua University developed under the SANBio program, which is a multi-nutrient block for ruminants. That's cattle as well as goats, and it also applies to sheep and also applies to game. We've taken that technology in, added it onto our basket, and we are distributing it through our branches around the country in Zimbabwe, and through our agents as well in Zimbabwe. But looking at our route to market, we distribute our products through our branches and through our agents as well. But we have also opened an export market into Mozambique for our products. So which means that the Chinua University block also has got an opportunity to cross the borders through Capital Foods.
Thank you very much. And on that point, I'll ask Dr. Beto Ntangeni to introduce himself.
I've just been introduced when she said Dr. Beto Ntangeni. So that is who I am. Less than 15 kilometers from here, it is where I come from in terms of who pays for my salary. I work for a private state-owned company called On the Step World Biological Products. I'm saying a private because it does not get any funding from government. Yes, it is a state-owned entity, but you have not been hearing much of it as a state entity because it is self-sufficient and self-sustainable. OBP is the largest manufacturer of animal vaccines in Africa. And you probably have heard that there was an outbreak of lumpy skin in Europe, and that disease was curtailed through the use of LSD vaccine produced by OBP. So we develop vaccines, we market and sell them throughout the continent and the globe as a whole. We are currently building a new facility. If you come and visit us at OBP, we are a construction site. We are building a $500 million new facility, which is GMP compliant or good manufacturing compliant. And our production capacity will be going to 3,000 liters of production.
Good, thank you. And then lastly, definitely but not least, Peter, can you introduce yourself?
I'm going to follow suit there. I worked in for a very big private state-owned company. It's called the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC of South Africa. IDC is a state-owned corporation, but we self-funded since 1942, nearly 80 years old. I always call ourselves the government's merchant bank. We very much operate like a bank, and we, like I said, development funding institution. I'm not going to go into the detail of my current job at the IDC, but more my history, where I had quite a number of years what I call the IDC hospital, businesses in distress. And businesses are normally in distress because they make very poor decisions, and scaling one of them. And then I've got some venture capital background from the IDC. Also on the failure side, it's always good to know failures, and you know what not to do. And then I've got some commercial experience where we took a company owned by the IDC from something to something much better. And I will play around that and in the advice and the questions here. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So one of the things that I'm hearing a lot from is companies that have taken technologies that were developed, say, at universities elsewhere, and they've now integrated them into their companies and they're scaling them. Now, this room is full of innovators, and Graham, maybe you can speak to it. What are some of the pitfalls that you experience when you're taking a technology, you know, from maybe pilot scale at a university or lab scale to a point where you need to scale it up to meet your market demand?
I think that's a very good question. I think coming from the marketing and sales side, I think the most important lessons that we've learned is to actually produce a product that you know your consumers want, and not something that you think is going to work. And I think there's a certain amount of gut feel that a producer has. And I'll give you an example that we did, unrelated to product, but you can relate it in terms of the point I'm trying to make. We introduced a brand of juice into the market, and before we introduced the brand of juice, we went and designed a label, and we went to a design company and we paid a lot of money, and they came with 3 designs, and they were really beautiful. For those of you that live in South Africa, it could have been almost related to like a Woolworths type label. And we presented this to our management, and they thought this was fantastic. And we said, all right, let's take it to the market, and how do our consumers relate to this label? And to our surprise, the consumers did not relate at all to the label. There was only a 20% favorability in terms of the label. And we realized that our consumers, and knowing our target market, we need to design something that is applicable to them. And we had to go back to the drawing board, and the label changed completely. It was something very basic, a picture of the fruit of the juice, the right colors, the right words, that they knew what it was. And I think the same in terms of when developing a product. You need to make sure that you develop in terms of what the consumer wants. And then, while you scale it up, you can't lose that form of quality. And I think we're sort of at that process now in one of our products, where we've gone from a very basic concept, and we now need to sort of triple production with new procedures, and we need to maintain sort of the quality of the product, which is quite a challenge. But you know, the only way I can recommend that you do that correctly is continually going back to the market and to your consumers and testing it, and making sure that what you put on shelf, you know is going to sell.
And Beto, do you maybe also want to add to that from a product perspective? You know, we work closely with yourselves at the CSR. What are the nuggets that you can give us in terms of, you know, what you need for a product that you can get into the market in terms of scaling up?
I'm going to give an example of a product that was brought to OBP. And the market really, really wanted that product. And it is a product that was going to be a killer product when it gets to the market. And the technology was from one of the research councils, not CSIR. And the product, or the technology was brought to us. And already they've sensitized the market that there's a new product which is coming. And everybody in the market, you know how difficult the commercial farmers are when they're expecting a product and the product is sold to people in a manner which says it's going to eliminate all their problems. And the word was out that OBP is producing that product And they gave the product to us, but the problem is that they have done the discovery in 1 liter. And in my opening remark, I said we work up to 3,000 liters. And the market is expecting this product, which is a killer product. And we have to move from 1 liter to 3,000 liters. So that does not happen overnight. And to complicate the problem, they were using raw materials which were not allowed. So they were using meat-based media to produce the product. And nobody wants to buy a product which is meat-based. And you cannot even be able to register the product in the market. And they didn't do a proper analysis of their ingredients. Some of the ingredients, they were contaminated by what is referred to as adventitious materials. And this product, if it has to go to the animals, those ingredients, they must never be there. And they were even using serum which were from areas which were affected by diseases. And nobody wants to buy anything from that side. And then it becomes a challenge when it has been brought to OBP to say, OBP, the market is waiting for the product. And we have to go back to start from scratch. And the other thing is that when they've done it in 1 liter, the mechanization of that process is not there. They were still using the hand to stir their product. But at OBP, we use big propellers, fermenters with propellers. So there were all those issues. And to be able to remove those issues, it takes 5 years. And now there's the market which is waiting out there for this killer product. Even today, the industry has not yet forgiven us in terms of this product that OBP must produce. But the problem started when word went out that we've got this killer product, whereas all the basics were not in place. So I think what is good here is that when you want to develop a product, and it's a product which is very much regulated like the industry where we are in, speak to a commercial partner. Then whether it is the raw materials, whether you are looking for contaminants or adventitious materials, whether you are looking for opportunities where you can mechanize from the beginning, you get to know all those steps well in advance.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Mr. Owen, do you want to add to that?
Thanks, Doc. I will share, basically, we're still early days in terms of commercializing the product that I've already mentioned. On the pitfalls, so far, basically, I think it's a good thing that this session has come in quite early at this stage. When you are in the feed technology business, particularly animal feed, efficiency is very, very, very important because we are dealing with a very low margin product. Stock feed or animal feed is a very low margin business and high volume as well. And we just have to be efficient in making sure that the whole process that is involved in making the product available to the customer, we have to make sure that we're efficient throughout all the stages that are involved. What are those 3 stages? The first one is basically procurement of the ingredients that are required. Because when we're making animal feeds, we basically work with quite a number of ingredients. So procurement, you have to be very, very efficient in both in negotiating the deals that gives you the ingredient at the lowest possible price, and cutting the red tape. It was mentioned yesterday in one of the sessions. There was a presenter who actually highlighted the issue of red tape in the public institutions procurement. Cutting the red tape is because you definitely need to have a continuous flow of the product once you've introduced it. Beto has already mentioned, they created all the excitement on the market, but come to the delivery of the product, it's not there. So if there's red tape at the procurement stage, you tend to have stockouts in the system. We already noticed it with our colleagues at university. Prof is here. We have, on the commercialization, we happen to supply them with some of the ingredients that they use in the manufacture of the product because they're still manufacturing. We're only coming in on the distribution side. They buy some of the ingredients from us. We issue them with a pro forma invoice. It takes 3-4 weeks before they pay. They make a payment. And in any case, we're working in an environment in Zimbabwe where the prices are not static. By the time they pay, the prices have changed 3-4 times. And they have to recost the product, and we have to be lenient and give them the product at the old price, but really that's not how you do business. It's like we're nursing them. So that's one stage, the first stage. The second is manufacturing. I must say, I think we've launched it. We probably launched it too early before they're prepared, because on the sales and marketing and distribution side, where we're quite strong. We know very well we're going to sell that product. It's a very, very good product. But they're still not well capacitated in terms of manufacturing. They do not have the high precision equipment. We've noticed it. We've just taken in an order from them, I think 400 units, and we weighed the products at random, and they were all overweight. Yeah. Supposed to be a 10 kg unit, they about 11 kgs. I've mentioned, animal feed is a very low margin business. You can't give away 10% of your turnover. And basically, that's what we're doing right now. Probably they still have got that cushion from the funding, but when they wind off and they are going to be standing alone, it's likely to hit the bottom line big time. Because, I mean, from 100 units at an extra 1 kg, that's 1 ton, there's 100 kgs extra that we've given for free to customers. And you can't sell, you can't scale actually with such inefficiencies. So it's something that we have already discussed with them. We are their commercial partners, and I'm quite sure they'll be working on that very quickly.
Thank you.
Try and rectify.
So you've already touched to some extent on my next question, and this is specifically for Peter. So at what point then should a company or an innovator do the techno-economics of a project? And I'm sure as a funder, that's one of the things that you look at, right?
Yes, we do. I want to make a couple comments before going to the dirty detail. Everybody think their baby is the most beautiful baby out there, and that's a big problem. You must make sure you have a commercial business that's profitable before you even consider thinking scaling or use that in the boardroom. Saying that, you must have a boardroom, you must have a structure in that company that you know what you can do. So what happened with businesses, and I've heard some of the stories here, and it's the business. In business, people spend lots of time on technology, lots of time on product. That's a nice thing, that's exciting things. You feel so glad if you make something that nobody else can make and it looks like people want to buy it. But like with today, we spent an hour on investment and we gave the guy that tell you how to make money out of this only 10 minutes without questions. And that's what's happening in business as well. People they think because this is nice and this is unique, everybody wants it. And that is not so. People are very, very cautious when they give money away, either investment or buying a product. So you must have a good business before you can try to scale it. And the good business must have 3 things in my mind that is very, very important. And people always start with strategy, but then people say culture eats strategy for breakfast, but then there are very bright people that say structure eats culture for lunch. And structure is that thing that you need, because the biggest pitfall is in a small business you're in control. You're in control of everything. You know exactly who's working for you, what the kids are doing, and why they're not at work, or why something's going wrong. As soon as you scale a business, you have 0 control, and you need to rely on structure to do all of that for you. So structure is very, very important, and you must have a business that can absorb that. So it's expensive. So where you run something with 3 to 5 people out of a small office or many times a garage, if you go into manufacturing on a great scale, you must be able to afford what you need to afford. And there are so many things in a business that's relevant. As soon as you get 50 or more employees that you need to look after and do things, it's a total different ball game. And that's what people underestimate most of the times. Saying lastly the thing that I've seen the most, 80% plus of businesses fail, is leadership. The entrepreneur is very rarely the right CEO for a scalable business, very rarely. And the sooner the entrepreneur, or let's call it the inventor, because realizes that he or she needs somebody with commercial acumen, then that's where magic happens.
So yes, to that point, I mean, we always hear that a business needs a different CEO depending on the stage that it's at. How open are entrepreneurs to that? How open are the innovators to that? Because you can imagine, right? You invented this, you started up this company, you don't want to easily let go. So to what extent do you, as a funder, insist on that type of change taking place? And what's your, what's your observation generally in the space?
I will tell you some lessons learned at the IDC. The IDC run venture capital for about 10, 12 years, invested about R1 billion in approximately 30, 35 companies. Of those 35 companies, I know of 3 that's doing well, extremely well. This past year, we've sold one that's probably doing, it's the best income we've got from a company in this sector, life sciences company. But the others are all in distress. Half of them are not around anymore. Some of them abandoned. I had lunch with a lady that I had to hear, you abandoned me 3 years ago and I'm nearly dead. So we've learned lessons there. We believed if technology is really good, and our rules were it must be novel technology, must be South African owned, and the IP must stay here. And then we didn't really go into detail of the people running the business. And we've learned expensive lessons in that. So what we've learned is, and what we apply now, is if we look at business now, it's still important. Finance, marketing, technical, that is very, very important. But we zoom in on management now. And we will not now support the business if we do not think the right commercial acumen is in that business.
Thank you. Now, so there's clearly your business morphs, right? But also, as you scale, there's a dependency or a reliance on other people or other businesses, if I think from a distribution perspective, etc. How do you navigate the space, moving for a point where you do everything? As a company, you make the product, you do your business to business distribution, etc. Now you're operating at a larger scale and you need to think of a different model. How do you navigate that space? Maybe Graham, you want to talk to it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and I think Peter's comments are so very, very true. And I think as a business establishes, you sort of establish departments and the right sub-managers in those departments, and you'll have someone in charge of production, someone in charge of distribution, someone in charge of merchandising. And I think you've got to keep looking at yourself to say, are you market related in terms of efficiency? And, I'll bring the example of distribution. You sort of got to make sure that if there is someone out there that could be more efficient at distributing a product and provide the same service than you, possibly look at them doing it, because ultimately you need to remain competitive on shelf and return a profit. And you can't do that where one of the chains or sectors in the chain is unprofitable or inefficient in comparison to your competitors. So I think you need to, while you grow your business, make sure that in every segment you are efficient.
Please do add.
Sorry. Yeah, just to add on to what Graham said, in our sector, the biggest costs come in manufacturing, and they also come from sales and marketing and distribution. Manufacturing, we can't run away from it because we've got a factory, we've got the equipment, and we've invested in raw materials. But when it comes to sales and marketing and distribution, as I told you earlier, that our route to market is basically dependent on our branches. We only have got 14 branches around the country. The level of overheads in the branches, I mean, it takes a lot of pushing for a branch when we evaluate it as a little business unit to break even. It takes months. You end up actually meeting the costs of the branch from head office profit, which should not be the case. So in our case, our growth comes not only from our distribution network, but we've engaged agents like distributors, like what Graham also does. We've grown on the back of the support that we have received from our distributors. These distributors are already in the game selling other products. Like most of our distributors are those that are already selling agro inputs. Like we've got, like for those from Zimbabwe, we've got chains like Farm and City. We've got Omnia Fertilizer Company. I think they're here they're headquartered here in South Africa, and they're out in Zimbabwe. They're out in Zambia as well. They are mainly an agronomy kind of business, but we have added in, through partnership with us, we've added in the livestock component in there. They now distribute our products. They now distribute veterinary products, which we also advocate for in all our distribution outlets, be they agents or branches. We have seen a lot of our growth coming from the distributors, third-party distributors. And in terms of the split, our branches actually sell 40% of what the factory manufactures. The other 60% is all driven by third-party agents.
Beto, looks like you want to comment.
Yes, I just want to add a few things. Yes, there's a very significant reliance on third parties, even from the raw materials. You find that you have got a production process and you cannot produce those raw materials. Those raw materials, they come from somewhere. And sometimes it's a pity those raw materials, they have to come from outside the country. You have got the rand-dollar exchange, which is fluctuating all the time, and you cannot predict with certainty in terms of your production costs because of those variances, which you need to contend with. And my fellow panelists here have already indicated in terms of having agents. As SOBP, yes, throughout the globe we have got agents. We realize that, when you have got agents, and these being the people who know the politics of the country, people who know the culture, people who can network within the country, that helps. Rather than like me now going to somewhere else and say, no, I'm starting to sell products. I won't be knowing the culture and how the system operates. And we must not forget or take lightly the politics in terms of regional politics. We have got SADC, we have got ECOWAS, and we can extend it to Europe, European Union or European Commission. And you find that in Europe, they will say that, okay, if you are to sell a product here, or if it's some form of a tender, it must be a product which has been manufactured in EU. So that is a reality. And then as people say, okay, fine, because we will be the outsiders and we need the market, what do? Then you find a partner who can produce in that country or in that region. Even in SADC, it will tell you that, no, you buy from your country first. If there's nothing, you buy from SADC. If there's nothing, then you can go out. So then you are going to need partners, people who are going to help you in that regard. And as SOBP, we relied very much on agents, and I can indicate that 2 years back, our revenue, we got more revenue from outside the country than local, just to show you how important the third parties are.
So on your last point, I mean, we always say, at least in the life sciences sector, that South Africa is too small a market for any business. And obviously the minute you operate outside of your own country, where you probably know the legislation, the game completely changes. So when scaling a business, and anyone can take this question, what are the things to avoid? What are those things that you must look at and say, if this is something I'm seeing in a certain market, then it means I must stay away from that market, or something you're seeing in your business that you want to then, if you have those instances, you should then avoid those.
Politics is very much important. Zimbabwe, we do sell a lot of products to Zimbabwe, but there was a problem of cash flow. You would supply, then they will say, we don't have cash to pay for that. So then you would need people who will come and buy in cash. Then for places where like Zimbabwe say, okay, you can buy, but cash up front. So, and those are some of the things. And there are some other regions also where you find that there's too much political instability. You are never sure who's going to be in power the next day. So you avoid those territories. And there are other regions where they want to exclude you from their markets. And they would use any means. And that is business. I did indicate that we're building a $500 million facility, a GMP facility or good manufacturing facility. And the reason we had to do that, we realized that we're being closed out of certain markets because we didn't have an EU-approved GMP facility. So if you want to access those markets and they are restricting you from a criteria that you don't have a GMP, then what do? You invest in that facility. But I need to indicate that South Africa, we are very much democratic. And there was a point where when we became very free, we opened the markets for everybody. And products, they are flooding into our country. But we don't have the restrictions. And now we are trying to fight back to say, no, there's too much competition. So those are some of the things which are real. And as SOBP, we are facing competitors like anybody else. Whether you are a government entity or not, we have to self-fund ourselves because we don't get any cent from the government in terms of our operational costs.
Good. Anyone else wants to comment on that?
I'll comment, yeah. I think it's a good question. I don't think you've got to be the biggest and the best player out there in order to make money. And I think for especially small businesses, it's fine to be a regionally based business because I think there's a real threat of the concept of diminishing returns. As soon as you get bigger, you incur more costs. And while your net profit might look bigger in the end, the cost of getting that extra business, people don't actually realize. And sometimes going into the additional markets, you come against fiercer competition and you try and compete against them at a much higher cost than what you do within your local region, for example. And that's why I think for small businesses, the diminishing returns as a concept, I think, is worth considering before you scale and want to take over the world type of thing.
Sorry, just to add on to that, I will just add on to the cost aspect. In our field, when it comes to making animal feed, you get about 12, 13, 14 ingredients that go in there. And there's a process that we call product costing. That is quite key. I'll just share this. It's not really an experience that we're having, but that potentially was coming from potential bioscientists who wanted to get into business with their product. It's because at Capital Foods, we do have the computer software to do the recipes. And from there, you can actually come up with the least cost recipe, including the costings and what have you, which some institutions do not have. And I don't think we've got any in Zimbabwe that has got such access to such. So the supervisors normally, when they're developing the products, they bring them up to us to formulate for them. In their proposals, because we always ask for the proposal to understand the background to this technology that they want to develop and possibly scale later on. They'll be talking of partial substitution of this particular ingredient and make a more affordable products and this and that. But when we actually take it in and do the costing of the product, we will find that with that new ingredient that they're putting in there, the actual product actually costs even more than the alternative that is already in the market. And it's actually a tragedy if they are to, obviously to bring some good results. And in most of the cases, the results come out quite nice after feeding trials and what have you. But you can actually tell that the, 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 the inventor behind the product is oblivious of the costing of the product and its potential on the market. And I think there was a presenter who came in earlier in the morning who spoke of technologies that are developed and only 0.5% of them succeed to end up on the market. And that's actually one of the pitfalls that befalls some of the very good ideas behind the researches that we see in the public institutions.
Thank you.
I'll just have a couple short comments here. Just in the beginning, if you have a buyer that never pays you, you don't sell your product, you actually subsidize them. That's not a buyer. You must actually cut them off and just move away. So that's not an excuse for running a bad business. You should not have sold the stuff to them in the first place if they can't pay it. And I'm saying this in this way because that is the harsh decisions you must make as a management team. You must be able to make decisions. And if you don't make a decision, you made a decision not to make a decision. And people don't understand that. It's very interestingly in business how people will, on the fly, make a decision, say, listen, this looks good, let's go there. Although you have all the information in the world that you can use and turn into knowledge to make a much more informed decision. But it is very difficult to do that. It takes work, it's hard work. And I always said in a business you have all these different levers. And each little bit of your business is a lever. And if you don't understand, if you turn that lever, exactly how it's going to change your bottom line, profit, cash is king, then you must not touch that lever. Just leave it and work out all these things. And if you understand that very, very well, and you know how you tweak these little things and exactly what it contributes to your bottom line, then you're running a business and you can start thinking about scaling.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, I see one from the back.
Thank you very much for the discussion. If a company is failing, usually it's placed under administration, so that can be next. It can be next back to health. As funders, would you recommend that for startup companies that have very good innovations, we sort of appoint caretaker CEOs that can mentor the innovators, so that they don't make mistakes during the early phases of the company. In that way, we can have more successful innovations getting to the market.
Good, thank you. I think we can take a few more questions. There's another one. So we've got 1, 2. Any others? Just so we can see everyone. Okay, so we'll take these 2 questions and then you can respond.
Hi, I would just like to ask the last speaker. He mentioned that there are only 3 companies that have done well so far that were in your portfolio. Would you like to speak a bit about that? You said one company has done extremely well once you had sold it. What sector were they in and what steps did they take to reach that level? Thank you.
I just want to agree with, I think, everything that's been said by the panel. One thing perhaps that wasn't said quite as explicitly for me anyway, is the issue of systems. In my experience, I find that one of the biggest problems in small businesses as they grow from, let's say, one-man type business in scaling up to be a fairly big business is the lack of systems. And if you don't have systems, I think it's a sure way of failing somewhere along the line. This in our country I find is particularly prevalent with black-run businesses. that the owner starts off very nicely, lots of market, growing market share, everything going rosy, but they continue to run it like a tuck shop. And as it gets bigger and bigger, they lose control. Cash flow goes into the negative. They start getting shortages and so on and so on. So I think for me, the issue of structure was mentioned, but I think for me it's part of the systems that you've got to put into business. That stabilizes everything. It also means that it creates a lot of time for yourself, which leads me to my second aspect of leverage. I think it's a very key concept in businesses, especially as you get bigger, because you don't have to do everything yourself. You can farm things out, you can outsource certain things, and you keep a tag on what you do best. What other people do best, you pay them, and they do it for you. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Maybe a response to the questions asked and maybe the comment?
I think I'll start with the business rescue. Short answer, I haven't heard of any success story in business rescue so far. And I think that's where I will end that discussion. If you're formally in distress, it's very, very difficult to get you out of there by using a bunch of consultants that's also making money out of your distress. Sometimes it's better just to pull the plug. It's a tough decision, but some of the most successful people around we know failed 6, 7 businesses and then they make it. Saying that, if you recognize early enough the distress, so you're in control of your business, then it's much easier to get out of it. But if you get to the stage of business rescue, it's quite far down the road. IDC, we've got our own workout restructure department. We look at our own businesses in distress. We try, as long as possible, not to go the official business rescue route, because it's just easier to maneuver out of it. Venture capital businesses, we do our own post-investment and rather pull the plug than just throw money further down that tube. I want to support on the systems, that structure, very, very valuable. Then the success story, I'm just going to talk quick about one success story. I will name the company actually now because it's been done. I'm not sure it's published, but it was an open tender that the IDC is selling this company. It's called Synexa Life Sciences. They manufacture biomarkers, Cape Town-based company. I think many people in the audience will know about them. It took them 15 years to get where they are. The IDC was with them from the start. We've invested quite early, then we left them for a good 10 years, and then we invested again in the last 5 years, where the business actually, so they started as a research company, and they were manufacturing something everybody needs. They make sure everybody knows that they're manufacturing it, and they're doing it very, very well. So they got some international acclaim, and people globally recognize that. And on international scale, they were quite small, very, very small, but significant. And then somebody bought them out because they knew that we can take this globally. So the lesson learned there was first they were in for it. The management team were in there all the time. They were not greedy. They suffered in that 15 years. They had enough structure. They know exactly what they do. They know exactly where to go in what market and with what they're going there, what they need. And now they've done very, very well. So that is a company that had a very good management team and put everything in place as they grow that company.
Sorry, if I might add to the first question. My best advice to any innovators here, whether it's a bioscientist or you are any kind of innovator, and you are your ambition is to be an entrepreneur, I think you should find time to expose yourself to what happens in the private sector. Because I've been in research myself. I was in research, more addicted to that for years. I joined the private sector in the past 15 years. For the past 15 years, I've been in the private sector. The culture is totally different. the innovator should find time. I think we've had a few, we have had Prof actually using his contact leave. It's quite normal or usual for the academics during the contact leave to visit another university overseas. It gives them opportunities to see new places. But the Prof chose to come and work with us during his contact leave. And I'm telling you, I think that short stint there changed his life in terms of thinking business, because the culture in the private sector is money, how to make money, and its efficiencies and the bottom line. So as an innovator, yes, it's nice to come up with nice products that look attractive and probably appoint a team of managers that are competent, but as the innovator yourself, try and you make yourself the shareholder of your product and have particular interest on how your product is going to be driven into the market. So let's get out of this shell of being scientists and let's start thinking about making money.
Sorry, I just want to something, and I actually want to say it, and this last is very, very important. Don't throw the baby out of the wash water. Many people appoint agents and now suddenly somebody else is in charge of your business. Be very careful who you allow to sell your whatever you sell.
On that point, can we give some closing remarks?
Sure. I think relating to one of the questions that was asked, I think even in a family business, there have been times where we've gone through some incredibly rocky and tough stages. And the comment made about systems and structure, I think, is vitally important. I think while sales and production are the strategic driving forces of the business, the heartbeat of the business is your system. And, for example, what we do every single week, every single morning we'll have a cash flow projection. Every single week we have a debtors meeting to make sure money coming in, money going out, that we manage that. And I think especially through tough economic times, if you take your eye off the ball there, once you've established as a commercial business, I think is the first pitfall that you'll probably find that you go under. Strategy and development and product development and route to market, all strategies that you put a plan into place and then you act on that plan in order to, try a strategy. But I do think the heartbeat of the business is sound structures and administration.
In closing, I would like to emphasize on one thing, which is what was one of the questions, quality system. So quality, it can break you, or if you fall, to recover, it may be something which is not possible. In our field, we work with vaccines. Imagine if there's an outbreak there because of your vaccine. The reputational damage which goes with that is enormous. Think about cars which are burning. Think about the listeriosis. So you don't want that to be happening in your company. So you need to invest in quality systems.
In the past 2 days, I've come across quite a number of bioscientists here who are in the agricultural sector. And my assumption is that most of the technologies that they are working on, or that they will work on in future, will definitely go into the value chain that produces human food. And I think for those who were there yesterday, Dr. Konde, I think, mentioned that when it comes to human food, the market expects it to be affordable. And affordable means lowly priced. And so are all the technologies that we develop as agricultural scientists. They go into they are an input into a value chain, into a value chain that produces human food. So our customers expect the technologies to be affordable as well, so that they can produce cheaper food. So we are an unfortunate bunch of scientists who are out here sweating all the way to produce product that's supposed to generate very little revenue for us. So in that instance, then it means that we just have to be ultra efficient if we are to make money out of our innovations.
Okay, closing. Make sure you've got a product that there's a market for it and people that's willing to buy it. Doesn't mean if you make a body cream and America is selling $1 billion worth of body cream a year, and that's the market that they want your product at your price. So make sure that that is right. Your product at the right price. So it sounds easy, but there are MBAs about this subject only. So be careful when you get to that. Spend time on that. If you have, it was said earlier in the investment panel as well, if you have the right product, you'll always have a good business.
Good. On that point, I just want to thank all of you. I'm not going to speak for myself only, but for everyone, that this is quite informative, but also hearing the different perspectives. I think what I take away that it's not just about making the product, it's about the people, about the systems, and about the financial position of the business when you scale. So on that point, I just want to thank you all.
Thank you very much to the panel and the facilitator on that presentation, on that discussion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will take a 5-minute tea break, and when we come back, we get into session 9 according to our program, and this session focuses on SANBio and the way forward. I must also indicate, ladies and gentlemen, that Dr. Eric Chikawea, SANBio Network, will be the one facilitating that particular discussion. That will see us into the time when we actually announce the pitch winners. So, shall we be upstanding, ladies and gentlemen, just before we go for tea break? In Zambia, where I come from, we have, my tribe has the traditional cousins, and they came from South Africa. They, ran away from King Shaka, and they settled in the eastern part of the country. So this is the Ngoni tribe. So from their traditional dance, you will be able to know that, they came from war because it's a warrior dance. But from the north where I come from, I think we didn't do too much fighting because our dance really has to do with just shaking the West. And so very quickly, just before we go for a tea break, we're going to shake to the left, shake to the right, and to the left, and then we can go for tea break.